answering your tough financial questions for the past 26 years. It's Allworth's Money Matters with co-hosts Scott Hanson and Pat McClain. Would you like an opinion on a financial matter you're dealing with? Whether it's about retirement, investments, taxes, or 401ks, Scott Hanson and Pat McClain would like to help you by answering your call. To join Allworth's Money Matters, call now at 833-99-WORTH. That's 833-99-WORTH.
Welcome to Allworth's Money Matters. I'm Scott Hanson.
I'm Pat McClain.
Glad you are with us as we talk about financial matters. Both myself and my co-host here, Pat, we're both financial advisors, practicing financial advisors with roughly 3 decades of experience each. And we come here, broadcast a program on the weekends to be your financial advisors as well. So,
yes,
although we can only, and frankly, we still have a small number of clients, not like we did years ago when we had more time, but we find this radio program gives us a chance to help people with some good financial advice, and sometimes even just a second opinion. As Pat likes to say in the industry, well, you say if we're in the...
if this is the food industry, everyone would be dead.
Yeah, I mean, half our industry... there's some great advisors in the financial space, people that add much more value than the fees they charge. But there are probably half the industry I would not trust with my children's piggy bank.
And regardless of the size. In fact, probably more to the size to the detriment of many of the clients. Large insurance companies with
crappy products.
Banks that take advantage of the fact that they're a bank and have investment arms that actually put people into inappropriate products, pricey products, not sufficiently disclosing the conflicts of interest.
So the reason we'd like to do this program, and have been for so many times, is just to provide another outlet, and also for second opinions. And oftentimes people will call us. They've been recommended to do something with their finances, with their investments, and want another opinion, and we'd love to take those calls. And if you've got a question regarding anything financial related, we'd like to take that call as well. And to join the program's 833-99-WORTH. 833-99-WORTH. Numerically, it's 833-999-6784. And we will get your call scheduled and get you on the air. Or if you listen to podcasts, we will schedule a time for that as well and have you on the program. And we appreciate taking calls because, one, we like to help the callers. And two, I think it makes for a little more interesting radio program than just hearing us blabber on.
I like the fact that sometimes they can be challenging, the calls. I like that. I find that our best advisors at Allworth are the ones that actually like the clients that are a little bit more complex, out of the ordinary, not run-of-the-mill.
Yeah, something you see a little different, complex situation.
Complex. So,
yeah.
Let's take some calls, Scott.
Yeah, so let's start off right here with Steve. Steve, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi, Scott, Pat. Thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I found you guys, I found your podcast last February, just in time for the COVID crunch and stock market. And I got to tell you, you guys gave me a lot of reassurance there. I mean, and after I was down about $700,000 in my retirement account, I was really close to saying, okay, we need to put cash. And I talked to my advisor. He said, no, stay playing. But you guys really reinforced that for me, and I appreciate it. And your comments about this too shall pass. And holy cow, it was a stressful time for me. But anyway,
thank you, Steve. Let's talk.
It was stressful for us too.
I know. So let's
and emotionally, it didn't feel. When the market was down 34% or whatever it was, it was a painful time, scary time for everybody. And from an emotional standpoint, I mean, I a lot of things I wanted to do personally as well, but that's where you have to step back and try to set the emotions aside. And that's one thing where you can, if you look back through history of economic cycles, unless you believe that humanity has somehow changed, which I don't think we've changed a whole lot. And although our American system of capitalism maybe is not what it once was, we're still in a lot of great places. So you step back, and it just kind of helps you put the emotions aside.
So Steve, I know you have a question, but I'll make a comment on that. I had a discussion this morning with another advisor who's been with us for 24, 25 years. And I said, if this taught us nothing, it taught us that we cannot market time. Because who would have ever predicted that the rebound would continue? Nothing we've ever seen. In fact, how fast
it could be the worst
rebound.
Economic news, and the market will be up 600 points.
And Scott and I were talking about it this morning. You see bankruptcies. You see companies filing from gyms, Planet Fitness, 24 Hour. You see Dunkin' Donuts closing hundreds of. You see United Airlines laying off. And then you see the stock market continue to rise, or at least hold its own. And this is why market timing doesn't work, because I would have never, I don't know anyone that would have ever predicted that the recovery would be as fast as it is. And that's the stock market recovery. The economic recovery may be 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, 3 years away from a complete recovery. And we have no idea. So anyway, thank you for listening to your advisor. And thank you for listening to us.
And by the way, do you listen to a lot of podcasts, Steve? Financial podcasts?
No, I listen to yours, and that's about it right now.
Right.
I listen to what's that one on NPR?
Anyway, Market
Watch.
You got
Market? No.
I know which one you're talking about.
You guys mentioned
It's
it
good.
4 years ago, but
Yeah, I listen to it as well.
Here's the only show I listen to now. It's
All right.
pretty,
Appreciate
good,
that.
straightforward. Plus, you got some they're fun to listen to. But my question is, I've got 3 questions. The first one is, do I pay off my house? And little background on me: I'll be 63 years old next month. My wife will be 60 next month. I retired 2.5 years ago. My wife wants to work till she's 65. That remains to be seen. But we're both real healthy and doing well. We bought our final home, our retirement home, the place we just, last place where we're going to die, a year and a half ago. And at the time, we got a 15-year, 4% mortgage, paid $500,000 for the house. We're in Missouri, just outside of St. Louis. We refinanced last month. I had a credit union had a 10-year. It's called retire your loan, and so I got a 10-year 3% loan, just literally, a month and a half ago. And I make my first payment on August 1st.
How large is the mortgage?
No closing. The mortgage is like I owe $176,000
Okay.
on it. The house was appraised for $567 when we had it refinanced.
Okay. And
so my payments are about $2,300.
are you on a speakerphone by chance, or?
Yes.
Oh, can you get off the speakerphone, please?
Yeah, because we're hearing some things are crystal clear, and other things are not quite so crystal.
Is that better?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's go with that.
Yeah,
Let's go with it. Okay, so you owe $176,000 on the house. Do you have any money in the bank, just like in bank savings?
Yeah, we do. I do. It's I got $20,000 in savings, probably $5,000 in checking. I've got one IRA with $125,000. I've got a brokerage account with about $375,000.
Okay, let's talk about that brokerage account. So you have a brokerage account with $375,000 in it. Is any of that money in the brokerage account in bonds or cash or something fixed income?
No, it's all secure.
It's all securities.
Yes.
And is the money in your IRA, is that in bonds or cash? Do you have any bonds in the portfolio anywhere?
And when Pat says,
I've got in my IRA, in my retirement account, we got approximately $2.3 million that are in the IRA 125,000 of that is in a Roth, and then the 375,000 that I just spoke of is in the brokerage outside of the.
Okay, so in the money in the IRA and the Roth, is any of that in bonds,
bond mutual funds,
or bond mutual
ETFs,
funds, cash, fixed?
Jenny Mays.
Yes.
How much? How much there?
Bonds. Probably half of it.
Okay, so here's how I want you to think of this, and then go back to your advisor with this question. Is there anything in your portfolio that's paying less than 3%?
Whether it's in the IRA or the brokerage account. For this one, don't
worry about what it is. Do you have anything in your portfolio that's paying less than 3% on its coupon?
You probably do.
Yes.
My guess is you easily have over $176,000 in your portfolio that's paying. So you're borrowing money at 3%, but you're lending money at a lower rate than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I say something? I built a model in Excel, just to hand it out 120 months to see if, I might be off base here, but to see if there's a benefit of paying off. And that 3% interest that I'm paying for 10 years comes out to $20,000. And then I remember I said my monthly payments for a house, $2,300 a month, but I paid tax on that.
Understand.
So here, given your net worth, whether this mortgage is paid off or not is not going to change your lifestyle. One would assume, right? So unless you are have some concern and you don't have enough monthly income coming in, and the mortgage payment is causing you to say, "Hey, honey, let's don't go out to dinner tonight because we have this mortgage payment." If that's the case, then it is impacting your standard of living. But you're at a point it should not. So in a perfect world, unless you like having the mortgage, and if that's the case, I would do a 30-year, not a 10-year, because presumably these are the healthy years of your retirement.
And see, so let's think of it this way. I come to you. Pat McClain comes to you and says, "Hey, Steve, here's what I want you to do. I want to lend you money at 3%. And you say, "Great." And then I say, "And what I want to do is then I want to borrow money from you at 1.5%. And you'd say, "What?" I'm like, "I'm going to lend to you at 3%, and I want you to lend it to me at 1.5%. Now, you ran an Excel spreadsheet, but you made it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. You're lending at 3%, and you're right. You're lending at 1.5% and you're borrowing at 3%. I guarantee you there are things in your portfolio that are yielding 1.5% that are fixed income, probably Jenny Mays themselves. So if you were sitting in an office with any of our advisors, this is what we would do. We would look at your brokerage account. We would harvest either losses or gains and determine what the tax implications were on that. We would then take that $176,000 and pay off your mortgage.
Assuming we could do it without any major tax implications. If we had some, then we'd weigh those in. We would make a decision. And but you might be saying, "What? I don't want to sell those stocks. That mutual fund, I like those funds. I like those stocks."
And what would we do, Scott?
We would repurchase those same stocks inside the retirement account.
We would sell the low-yielding bond in the retirement account and purchase exactly the same things that you had in the brokerage account. So what we're doing simultaneously, right, is we're actually keeping your allocation almost identical, but we've actually gained 1 to 1.5% on $176,000, which over the next 10 years will put you ahead, your net worth ahead, $23,000, somewhere in there.
And odds are you are not getting a deduction for these either, because the way the limitations on it and the high standard deduction. So, and Steve, unfortunately, your voice is cutting. I don't know if it's a bad cell spot you're in. So,
but that would be our advice. Go back to your advisor, and if your advisor says that's a bad idea, have them listen to this podcast and call me.
Actually, we'd have a debate on in the next podcast.
Yes, we will. I will have an on-air debate with your advisor if they tell you this is a bad idea.
And by the way, on that, any other advisor that would like to debate some of our stuff, because we talk like equity index annuities, we've laid out the challenge before. Any equity annuity salesperson would like to join us sometime, and they can debate why they think they're great products. We would love to have them on the program. But
Yes.
As of yet, we haven't had a lot of takers.
We do get emails,
or
though.
on equity index universal life insurance.
Yes.
As a great retirement savings tool and great for college savings, great for short-term
everything.
cash, great for
COVID-19.
It's not quite. I don't know about that, but yeah. Anyway,
Not the stretch.
but we talked about the market briefly with Steve. It is, and we'll get back to the calls here in a moment. But to think that whatever is happening in the news on any particular day is going to have an impact on the stock market, all you have to do is go back and look at the headlines for the last 3 months, 4 months, and compare to the stock market, and you'll realize there's almost no correlation.
It quite frankly, I am glad that our firm doesn't believe in market timing. I am quite proud of that because every indicator in the headlines, an economic indicator, would have told you, if you looked at it from 10,000 feet, would have told you that this is probably not a great time to be invested. But I use the word probably. But the reality is,
Well, the stock market's always future looking.
that's right. Right. Has historically been future looking. Not always.
Well, clear. I mean,
Yes.
the current price is whatever. The price of anything is what two parties agree it's worth.
That's
period.
right. That's
right?
right.
That's all that
And,
what the
and
price
so
of anything is.
maybe this market is being propped up by the Federal Reserve buying bonds in the secondary market, including exchange traded fund, high yield bonds. They're bringing liquidity to the marketplace, which, by the way, may in fact be keeping interest rates in the bonds lower than they would in a normal.
Now they're talking about having in part of their kind of mandate to keep rates low, long-term rates low, through a bond buying program, which is
So we remember when QE1 came out during the last crisis, and then it was QE2, and then it was QE3. There's almost no headlines about this.
and it might, Pat, it might have been because there was some concern about quantitative easing, which is Fed going out and buying securities in the open marketplace. But the fears didn't materialize in anything negative. If anything, it was the opposite. Things were positive, growing economy, growing. So maybe investors are looking at perhaps the Fed is getting this right this time.
When was the last time you heard the term moral hazard?
Well, you don't hear that anymore. But
You did the last decline in the market when the Fed stepped in. You heard it all the time. Moral hazard, moral hazard. It's interesting. And quite frankly, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I know that bringing liquidity to a marketplace in
times of crisis,
listen, it's the liquidity in a marketplace, the bond marketplace, is what keeps it's the lubricant that keeps businesses running. Right? You go to the grocery store, that stuff on the shelf on the grocery store, who owns that? Does the grocery store own it? No, right? They sell it on terms.
They do?
Yes.
All the groceries?
Almost all. It's sold on terms, 210, N30, whatever the terms are, right? They're sold on terms. The supplier, it's terms, right? It's the manufacturer.
And that all takes takes someone loaning that, right?
And what is a loan? A loan is a promise between two parties. I'm going to give you this. You promise you're going to pay it back. Oh, and by the way, we might hold this as collateral. But a truck full of Triscuits isn't the best collateral in the world. The secondary
They're
market...
pretty good. I don't know, particularly if you get some good cheese on
Oh,
them.
listen, the salt, the black pepper and olive oil, my favorite. But the point being is that the liquidity in the marketplace it's really, really, really important for the lubrication of the U.S. economy. The question is, how involved should the U.S. government, Federal Reserve, be involved in that liquidity, and when do you call it enough?
Right.
I don't know the answer.
If you would have asked me 15 years ago, my answer today is different than it would have been 15 years ago.
Yes.
After the financial crisis. But then you still kind of wonder over the long term.
What I don't.
The challenge. I mean, the real challenge in this particular environment is when we've got a health crisis, and we've got. It seems to me the epidemiologists have much more sway, much more power over decisions than any other expert out there that deals with life issues. So let's call it.
Yes.
So,
and there's a large portion of the population that has no confidence in government at all.
Well, yeah, we see some of those people. I guess.
Well, I guess we do.
You see them on the news. That's what you kind of scratch your head. But and on both sides of the aisle.
That's right.
But so we have a time now when you've got government-imposed shutdown. These are outside influences, not market. It's not a normal market environment. When you tell a restaurant they cannot have patrons indoors, that's not a normal market environment.
That's right.
You have a retail store and you say you can only have curbside pickup. You're not going to let anyone come in and try on your jeans or whatever.
Yes.
That's not a normal environment. So when you figure we've got the economy that government has imposed shutdowns, and it's been really fascinating. The PPP loans, Payroll Protection Program loans, that Congress came out right in the early days, right? Everyone's kind of freaking out, and no one makes the best decisions under duress or when you're in fear.
You speak of Congress here, or the people taking the loans, or both.
Or both, or all of us, right?
Correct.
I mean, you look back, we made some good decisions as an organization during that time, and some not the best, but you make the decisions you can, and so you
live with it.
And you live with it. And so one of the issues with the the payroll protection program loans designed for small businesses at the time, it's like made it look like, hey, anyone who needs this, you want to be able to keep people on your payroll, here it is. As long as you use it for your payroll, it's forgiven by the federal government. It's basically a handout from the transfer of wealth from the federal government, designed to go from the government ultimately to the workers.
Through the employer to the worker.
Through the employer to the worker. And now we're reading these headlines about these companies that have taken it, and they're getting just kind of destroyed in the press. It's really interesting.
We talked about it either last week or the week before with investment advisory firms that were taking it. And you had an argument that, a good advisor will help a client pay less in taxes, get more in Social Security, which is the form giving the government less and getting more from the government. And the PPP, after you had that, you and I had
we did not take Allworth Financial did not take any of the payroll
but
protection.
In retrospect, maybe we should have, Scott. Maybe we should have.
Why?
I don't know. I maybe we should have. Maybe that would have been a better business decision if maybe we bonus out the employees. Maybe we hire more employees. Maybe we open more offices. Maybe, right? Because the firms that took them, many of them absolutely. I know a gentleman that owns 2 large soap manufacturers. Soap, disinfectants.
He probably did very well this last.
Holy
4
smokes!
months. And he got the PPP.
He got the PPP. And why?
Because it was there.
Because
there's no parameters.
It's line up and take it.
Right. No parameters. Unlike the stimulus checks, where at least there were some parameters, like
if your income was too high.
Your income was too high, then you didn't. There was no parameters at all.
Yeah. And he said they're running 3 shifts a day, 2 plants, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Think about it. Any industry that you want to be in right now would be RVs, boats, disinfectants.
It's funny. My wife was actually my son said it'd be fun for us to go camping as a family.
For how long?
I'm not much of a camper.
6 hours?
I'm not much of a camper. In part, I say if we want to go backpacking, that's one thing. Camping, going to some campsite, you never know who's there drinking till 2 a.m. Right?
I love camping. I hate campers.
All right, well, that's so. And then the next thing I know, suddenly my wife comes to me a few days later. She'd been looking at renting an RV, right? And starts talking about the cost. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is rent an RV right now with every other person that's never owned an RV or driven an RV, which would be me, and trying to figure out the campsite. How do you hook the thing up? How do you all that? Like,
there was a great article this week in the Wall Street Journal about people that had just bought RVs or rented them and all the damage they did.
Yeah.
You've got to watch the movie RV.
I did see the movie RV with Robin Williams.
Yes.
That was all. Yes. That's
all you need. Next time she wants to go RV and just play that for her.
But they're clearly, to your point, there's some certain industries that have fared very well during this time, but those are going to be short-term blips.
And they took the PPP because it was offered. Right?
Yeah, I'm not here to pass moral judgment one way or the other on those companies that have done that. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with some calls. And if you want to join our program, contact number to be part of Allworth, 833-9. There's so many different toll-free lines. 833-99-WORTH. Again, 833-99-WORTH.
Once again, that's a free call in case you have a phone plan that was created in 1978.
Okay, yeah. This is Allworth Financial. We'll be right back.
Can't get enough of Allworth's Money Matters? Visit allworthfinancial.com/radio to listen to the Money Matters podcast.
Welcome back to Allworth's Money Matters. Scott Hanson here.
Pat McClain, thanks for staying with us.
Yeah, glad you're here with us.
And before we go to the calls at 833-99-WORTH, 833-99-WORTH, if you are listening to this on a podcast and you've enjoyed it even a little, even the smallest, please do us a favor and write a review. We can't ask for a positive review, but we are allowed to ask for a review. And if you have friends that you think might enjoy it, just forward that little podcast over to them, and we'd appreciate it. And that's it helps me and my family and all the great associates. It does.
It helps your family?
Yeah, more people listen to the show, more income.
I had breakfast with my 20-year-old nephew this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because he's going to. It's hilarious. We'll get some calls.
Can we go to Tim? He's been holding, and then we'll come back. I'll write this note, nephew.
Okay,
Scott, so we don't forget.
All right, let's talk with Tim. Tim, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hey, thanks for taking the call.
Hi, Tim.
So I understand that most actively managed mutual funds don't outperform the passive indexes when you factor in the fees.
Yeah, on stocks, yeah.
But with COVID impacting certain industries, it seems like maybe an actively managed fund might be able to avoid problem areas that won't come back for several years. And I have a growth fund that has had impressive returns 7 of the last 10 years, but I'm wondering, what should I be looking out for?
Have you judged that growth fund compared to the growth index that it closely mirrors?
The Russell 2000?
I don't know what the growth fund is, if that's the closest mirrored index.
Yeah.
How's it compare to that index?
It's doing better than that. And then if I wasn't in that fund, it's an apples to orange thing, but I would probably have it in the S&P, and it's definitely, doing better than that.
Well, so the question, did you buy this growth fund because you believed that growth was in a better position 7 years ago? Or did you own some value funds as well?
I've actually had this for about 20 years.
Okay. Well, you're probably not going to want to sell because of the capital gain implications.
Is it inside of an IRA or outside of an IRA or 401k?
It's in an IRA.
Okay, so there's no capital gains. And what percentage of your portfolio does this particular mutual fund represent?
Well, right now it's 30, and that was my other question: is what percent should it be?
Well,
yeah, so you're probably overweighted in growth stocks, which have done very well as the last 15 years compared to value stocks. But so here's the thing. When you look into to your point on here's the debate that goes along there, right? So it's, I don't know, depending on what study you look at, something like 80% of all actively managed stock mutual funds underperform the indexes that closely mirror them. So in other words, you would be better off just simply throwing in the towel and buying the entire basket of stocks and not even trying to manage these things.
But Scott, at the same time, you've got to measure beta, do you not?
Well, but to that point, 20% actually do outperform. So the question is, the ones that are outperforming, is that based on skill or is it based on random outcomes? And there'll be some economists that'll say, look, you can do those studies. It is complete. It's just luck. If somebody outperforms 19 of the last 20 years, that's just luck. Just like if you get a bunch of people flipping heads and coins, and you're going to have someone who gets heads more times than that. And so it could be that this particular manager as a growth fund just happened to be in the sectors that were undervalued at the time and that are now either more accurately priced or have outperformed clearly over that period of time. 30% in one growth fund
is too much.
Yeah. From a risk standpoint.
It's just too much. So how many mutual funds do you actually have, or ETFs, exchange traded funds, do you have in your portfolio?
Actually about 5.
Okay. And what percentage of your portfolio is bond or fixed income, and what percentage are stock?
The bond cash is 35%.
And how old are you?
56.
All right. I like the fact that you know all the answers. I'm just going to give you that. I would trim that position.
To
what percentage of your portfolio was it 7 years ago?
Actually, 10 years ago, it was 100% in this growth fund. And then about 10 years ago, I started to split things up because I'm starting to come up on retirement and stuff. But before, I was let it ride.
Wow.
I would have done really well. If I would have left it there.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
No, you can't do that
because it was a risk. It was a risk decision.
Yeah, you were mitigating risk. It's easy to look back and actually look at return in the view that there was no risk there, but you were trying to mitigate risk, which is why you actually made the decisions you made at the time, and they may or may not have been appropriate.
I had a client years ago who was a skydiver, and he one day just quit. Just like he had done a couple thousand flights, and he quit.
You mean he jumped out of a plane
a couple thousand times? He was an active skydiver, and I said, "Why'd you quit?" And he said, I knew too many people who died. Too many people died. And I figured eventually, if I do it enough times, it's gonna get me. Now, when he told me this, he had been quit for a few years. He could have looked back and said, I made a mistake by quitting because had I kept doing it, I would have had another 1,000 jumps because I see all these other people that have just survived fine. But the point was, it was a risk mitigation thing. It's like the benefit I'm receiving from that is not worth the risk at this point in my life. And maybe that's an extreme example, but that was the decision you made 10 years ago, which was the right decision and remains so.
So speaking of risk, which is what we're talking about, we're not talking about enhancing return. It may enhance return. It may not enhance return. You want to rebuild this portfolio with partially, I'd keep some of that fund, but I wouldn't keep all of it. I'd probably get rid of at least half to a third of it.
Okay.
And I'd buy the index, or I'd buy something on the other side of the equation.
I guarantee you don't own the fund in question.
I probably
And you
not.
could do a screening that shows what's a great growth fund the last 10 years, and it would probably be on that list.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean it's going to be great for the next 10 years.
Yes. That's why I said either I would buy an index or I would buy something on the opposite side of it. So if it's all growth and you're underrepresented value in the portfolio.
Growth has had a huge run.
I would probably have a tendency to weight more towards value. But quite frankly, I like index funds for the core of the portfolio and then use actively managed funds around the periphery.
Okay.
All righty?
And actively managed in some sections of the bond market.
That's right.
You actually look there and about half active managed. The bond market's a very different space. But about half of actively managed bond funds outperform their underlying index.
So go back and build a model of your portfolio. You'll find a tool, and you understand the difference between growth and value, large cap, mid cap, small cap. You understand that 65% of your portfolio is equities and 35% are fixed or other things. Just build that with that in mind, which is basic portfolio construction. All righty?
Sounds great. Thank
All
you.
right. Appreciate it, Tim.
Wish you well, Tim.
I was impressed that not a lot of people would actually fire it off unless you prepared for this call. I don't know.
833-99-WORTH is the number. We're talking with Josie. Josie, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
I'm 55, single mom, 2 adult children, got them through college. I basically did everything wrong with money. And I'd have to say kind of a long story, but I ended a 25-year marriage about 7 years ago. It was toxic, and we ended up losing everything. So really bad financial decisions. So now I find myself pretty much with very little retirement, a huge student loan debt because I assisted my daughter when she was going to a school that was way too expensive in New York. And I finally got a good job. I've got good income now, but now I'm going to have to try and figure out a way. And I don't own a home, so I have to try and figure out a way now how to pay off that debt. I was able to pay down credit cards, so I have no credit card debt, but I have this really big student loan debt of like $145,000 that I don't know how to pay back and buy a home and build retirement.
Okay, so Josie, let's just start. Listen, you raised 2 kids. They went to college. Presumably they are employed or will be employed soon. So that counts for a lot.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. As human beings, our number one priority in life is to take care of me and mine, and right, which is you and your children, and to hope that they have a better life than you have. And you've done that. So don't beat yourself up because on the standards of U.S. wealth indexes that you're not that high up, right? There are many parents that would love to say that their children went to college and that they are self-supporting and happy. So let's talk about the rest of it. Is there any way these student loans can be discharged because of the employment status of your children, medical, education, that they've entered those fields?
No, I had the reason it's gotten so big is because I had put it on forbearance because I was working in non-for-profit and I had put it on a loan forgiveness program and I started paying it down. But I had taken a big pay cut, so my income wasn't high enough, and then I didn't stay in those jobs long enough. Now I work for.
Wait, but are the student loans, were they taken out for you or a child?
They were a student loan for my daughter. It was a Parent Plus loan.
Okay. So
yeah.
What is your daughter doing now for a living?
She works in her field as a designer.
Okay.
Design.
Okay. I'm gonna recommend that you actually listen to Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, I've heard Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, and he's got like complete money makeover program because you're thinking the right things. It's going to take, it's not going to be easy for you to get the financial security that you're going to need. But you don't have you have little options. So you can either bury your head in the sand and these student loans are not going away anytime soon.
Right.
Yes. So he has programs, the Complete Money Makeover. They do, pre-COVID, they would do in churches around the country, they would do small groups where they're actually put together, small support groups surrounding debt and lifestyle issues. And they work with people on that. So that is the direction. If you were my sister, and you'd be my little sister, Josie, I would say go to Dave Ramsey's website, listen to subscribe to some of his newsletters, and buy his Complete Money Makeover.
Okay.
All righty?
Okay.
All right. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, I wish you well, Josie. And it's, I tell you, it's taking student loans for your children is I would highly discourage anyone who's got a child nearing college age. If you don't have the money saved, it makes no sense to get into these bunch of student loans.
And there are alternatives other than private colleges, such as public and community colleges, that your child can be educated at. The child graduates, not the college. The child graduates, not the college. So people like the idea that they went to the prestigious private college. But look, success in life, partially determined by that, but success in life, mostly determined by the drive of the student and how they actually absorb and use this tool.
So my son just graduated from Boston College. And in high school, he was all stressed out. He had, he applied to like 20 some universities. And I remember, so I went to junior college. It took me 4 years to get through the first 2 years.
You had a job?
I had a little business I ran. And then I went to a state school. And for me, I was didn't pay a lot of attention in high school. So I didn't have a lot of options at the time. But it might have been just my wiring as well, right? And clearly, when I graduated from the state school, if I wanted to go work for Goldman Sachs, they wouldn't have hired me.
Okay.
So it impacted my first few years in the marketplace. After that,
you're on your own.
It really makes no difference. I mean, when we hire people, particularly if they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, I can care less. It's like, what have you done with your life, right? So my son was so stressed out about getting into the right college. I'm like, son, I said, what difference does it really make? He says, well, then it'll impact what grad school I can go to. Like, okay, and then what? I mean,
what difference does that make?
Right? I mean, is that really the most important thing here?
So,
of course, now he's back home unemployed.
Student loans, parents, grandparents signing student loans. So, Scott, but before we took those calls, you said you had breakfast with your nephew.
And I forget what I was going to mention.
Your 20-year-old nephew this morning.
I completely forget what I was going to mention.
You're going to have to think about this.
I did.
You're having breakfast. You're having a discussion. He's 20 years old. He's moving into his career. I'm trying to give you.
I can recreate the breakfast experience.
Okay.
He had French toast and.
All right.
I had a bagel sandwich. Okay. Eggs with veggies, no cheese.
Wow. Yeah, we know you're healthy.
That's all I got.
We know you're healthy.
I don't know. What,
okay.
I can't help.
Well, if it comes to the surface, I'd like to.
It's not going to come. It's irrelevant.
I one time met one of your nephews who was a university professor or something, an avowed communist.
Oh yeah, I don't know if he's an avowed communist. No, this is hilarious. He just got his PhD in economics.
Okay,
and maybe it was some sort of global economics or something like that. This is a hilarious story. He's a great kid. He's not really a kid. He's mid-30s. He's got 2 kids now of his own now, but he's still so. He had recently, he'd spent 10 years getting his education because PhD, it takes a long, anyway. And I'll never forget, we had some sort of corporate offsite somewhere, and right near where he lived. And so we invited him to come join us for dinner. And afterwards, we're all sitting by, there was one of those fire pits at a hotel. And I'll never forget, Pat, you guys are having this conversation about taxes. And of course, he believes that tax rates should be much higher, for equality purposes, etc. And you said, I'll never forget, you said, well, look, you said, as an employer, if the tax rate gets too high, there'll be a point where I'm going to say, why should I take on any risk? Because if I take on risk and it works, I only keep 20 cents on the dollar. And if it doesn't work, no one's there to bail me out. It's all going to be mine. So there'll be a point, it doesn't make sense for me. And he said, I was sitting right there. I never thought of it that way.
Okay, he's an econ PhD in economics.
I just thought, you got a PhD in economics and you
never
thought
about of it from an employer's, risk takers, an entrepreneur, if you will, although I hate using that word, a multi-business owner over my lifetime. Many of them successful, but some of them not.
Correct.
Right? I mean, not everything
I just
works.
thought it was the funniest thing. You get a PhD in economics, and you never thought of it from
your nephew.
The taxation of income, or what it can do to.
Yeah, but most economic.
How did we get on this?
We were talking about nephews, and you have a ton of nephews. But most economic professors, in my experience, are relatively liberal. Everyone I had in college was absolutely liberal.
I don't remember. I do remember one economics teacher, Haney Scott. and he was old then. And then I was back at the college 5 years ago, and he had just retired. I thought, oh my gosh, he was. That's the nice thing about that profession; you can keep doing it forever. But one thing I enjoyed about Haney Scott is when the end of the school year, we'd go out, he'd take us out to the park, and he'd barbecue and buy a keg of beer for the students, all students. Yeah, I'd have a keg.
And that's all I remember about
That's all I remember.
That's all I remember about economics.
I had one, that's all. And anyway, let's continue on with calls. 833-99-WORTH is the number. We're in Colorado with Grace. Grace, you're with Allworth's Money Matters. And if you could turn off your radio, that'd be great.
Hello.
Hi, Grace.
Hi, Grace.
Hi.
What can we do for you?
I have a bit of a problem. I just took an equity loan out on my house. I had 45 equity in it, but I only took 40 because I didn't think I'd need more, but I do need more. So, because we're getting some construction done, our deck's fixed, and some paneling on the outside had to be replaced.
So, Grace?
And little miscellaneous things. Anyway, I got the loan for $40,000 at 2.75%, so 2.750. And I needed more money, so I told them I wanted the other $5,000 I had available. So I had to refinance it, and they said that I would be better off taking $399 interest instead of what I have now because it was fixed for 5 years.
Okay.
The 2.750 is not fixed for 5 years, but that took a big jump in the payment.
Understand. So what is the value of the home?
Well, I had it appraised about a year and a half ago, and it was $220, but I think now it's up to $240 or $245.
Okay. And what do you owe on the home? You talk about this equity line of credit of 45.
Right now, I own $109 on the house.
And what's the interest rate on the $109,000?
3.65, I think.
Okay, and
have you considered just refinancing the whole thing into a new mortgage?
On a 30-year fixed rate mortgage?
No.
Okay, well,
I hadn't even thought about that.
You're not getting the best advice.
No.
I'm going to preface that. We're going to try to give you better advice than what you've been receiving. How old are you, Grace?
76.
And are you married?
Yes.
And how old
My
is
husband? He's 66.
He's 66.
You're a real cradle robber there.
And the value of the home is $240. So you owe $109,000 and plus the $45,000.
What
correct?
income do you have coming in?
About 50, 51.
From where?
A year, that's all our total income.
And where does it come from?
Is anyone working?
Yeah, my husband's still working part-time nights and comes from Social Security and pension, military pension.
Who has the pension, you or he?
He does.
And do you have any money saved in IRAs or the bank or anything like that?
No, I have some money in the bank right now, but I already am spending it on furniture and stuff we needed for the house.
Well, you don't need furniture, really. I mean, that's a.
Believe me, I needed the furniture because I needed a lift chair to begin with because I'm handicapped.
Have you considered a reverse mortgage?
No, is it really good? I heard so many stories about it. It scares me to even think about it.
What stories have you heard that are bad about them?
That you'd never get your money out of it.
That's not right.
And if you want to sell it, you got a problem. And
that could be true, but that would be the same on
any mortgage.
On any mortgage.
Think of it this way: a reverse mortgage is no different than what you're looking at now, with the exception of you don't have to make the payments.
And the principal that you owe goes up every month by the amount of the interest that gets added to the back of the loan. So,
but interest rates are relatively low. And presumably over the long term, home prices will continue to increase. You're guaranteed to never be kicked out of your home. Given the fact that you just told me, particularly with you're disabled and you're borrowing money against your home so you can afford, so you can make it accessible for your disability. It's kind of like now so you're borrowing money, you're pledging your home as collateral. You have to make payments on that, and if you don't, they can take your home.
No, we make payments regularly.
I understand.
If you were my sister, Grace, I would say we're going to spend some time looking at what you could get as far as a reverse mortgage goes, and
but at a minimum, what you want to do is refinance this $109,000 and the equity line of credit of $45,000 into a new fixed rate 30-year loan that's going to be lower than both that 3.65 and that 3.99, and it's going to be fixed. Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Interest rates are about like 3% on a 30-year mortgage.
Yes. And
they're
assuming
really
you have good credit, you have plenty of equity in the home. I would call one of the big,
Quicken or one of those.
Yeah, or Loan Depot or Rocket Mortgage or one of those. But if you were my sister, these are the two options I'd look at. First of all, no brainer, you're going to refinance a 30-year fixed rate mortgage for both of those, and maybe even take another $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 out if you need to. And then the second thing I would explore is, I agree with Scott completely. I would explore a reverse mortgage.
There's some things to look at that because your husband's quite a bit younger. What's his health like, life expectancy, some of those others. So that reverse mortgage may not be the best thing for you today, but it might be something in the future. Just because it would provide you additional discretionary income each month to live.
And the only one that get hurt in a reverse mortgage is the people that would have inherited your money.
Yeah, and if you're concerned about them inheriting as much as possible, then live like a pauper.
Yes.
Don't go out to eat. Don't do anything.
Just save it for them.
Save it all for them. But I don't think that is your.
But at a minimum, 30-year fixed rate mortgage, put the first and the equity line of credit in there.
Yeah, I would look into those things as well. And you might be at a point. In reverse mortgage, by the way, appreciate the call, Grace. Reverse mortgage is kind of the last trip to the well. It's for most people, you don't want to have to plan for one. You don't want to have to be in your 70s saying, maybe I should get a reverse mortgage. But if you find yourself at that stage, then it's definitely something.
It's another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah. I mean, again, in a perfect world, the right kind of planning, you never even have to consider it. But sometimes we find ourselves in other situations. So we're out of time. Unfortunately, we are here every week at the same station. And if you listen to a podcast, of course, you can listen to us 24/7. This has been Allworth's Money Matters. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
This program has been brought to you by Allworth Financial, a registered investment advisory firm. Any ideas presented during this program are not intended to provide specific financial advice. You should consult your own financial advisor, tax consultant, or estate planning attorney to conduct your own due diligence.